As the investigation continues on the boat, each piece of wreckage in MacArthur Hangar is given a number. The work of sorting goes on. One begins to wonder how many parts and components make up a jetliner. Each item is examined for flaws or any unusual characteristic. Long and unrewarding work is a basic requirement in accident investigation. From this countless number of broken pieces, will the one be found that will reveal the true story of the disaster? At the Metallic Materials Research Institute, the bolt from the number 3 engine is being put through a series of comparative tests. Tests are conducted with the bolt in question and with metal of the same composition. Both shock and fatigue are created artificially. A test where the bolt is stretched until it breaks. Another test to snap the bolt by the application of shock. Various cross-sections are studied. A shell pattern created by artificially inducing metal fatigue. The bolt in question, however, did not clearly show a shell pattern. According to this microscopic photograph, the pattern is more like one caused by the force of being suddenly pulled apart. The final conclusion of the metallurgists was that the bolt in question did not break from metal fatigue. The next step in the investigation was the dismantling of the number 3 engine at Ishikawajima Harima Industries in Tokyo. If there was nothing wrong with the bolt, why was the fire extinguisher lever activated? And why did the meter of the number 3 engine indicate such a low power output? Perhaps the engine itself was malfunctioning. First, the outer part of the engine is removed. The turbine appears. Anything unusual, even the slightest scratch, must not be disregarded. An engineer closely examines for scratches or marks on the cold metal. The blades overlap each other. Important evidence that the turbine was turning until shortly before the impact of the crash. There is even more important evidence. The engine sucked in broken pieces of machinery, an indication that the number 3 engine had enough power left to suck in objects at the time the front part of the plane broke up upon impact. The number 3 engine was functioning normally. The combustion chamber, the heart of the engine, There is nothing abnormal. All suspicions regarding the number 3 engine have now been cleared. It was not the guilty party. The mystery concerning the fire extinguisher lever and the engine meter was accidentally caused by the impact of the crash. Now the eye of suspicion turns to the Boeing 727's efficiency and to the pilot. Two months have passed since the disaster. Spring has come to Zojoji Temple, where the souls of the victims lie in eternal rest. Cherry trees are in full bloom. The investigators are trying to determine the condition of the Boeing 727 moments before it hit the water. The Boeing 727 passed the Tokyo range station at 18:56 hours. At 18:59, it was flying at an altitude of 10,000 feet over Chiba. 2 minutes later, the control tower at Tokyo International Airport lost radio contact with the pilot. The plane descended at a rate of 5,000 feet per minute. Perhaps this was too rapid. The investigators board a Boeing 727 to trace a course similar to the one taken by the disaster plane. If the ill-fated plane tried to descend too quickly and therefore lost speed, perhaps something unusual would happen to this plane too. A small television camera takes pictures of the gauges in the cockpit. The readings are videotaped for analysis. An investigator reads the instrument panel. The Tokyo range station is passed at 12,000 feet. The plane banks wide to the right in preparation for the descent. The plane begins to sink as the pilot grips the throttle. The aircraft descends at a rate of 5,000 feet per minute. The plane is rocked by small vibrations. The white caps of the bay are clearly visible.
Now over Nojima.
A patrol boat stands at the ready at the crash site. Over the crash site, altitude 2,000 feet. The plane took the same course as the disaster jetliner and dropped 10,000 feet in 2 minutes. Nothing unusual was detected in the Boeing 727. A design intended to withstand the strains of an extremely rapid descent. An excellent aircraft. Ironically, one can say that the plane is almost unbelievably perfect. The pilot of the ill-fated plane was a 40-year-old veteran. The pilot's last entry in his log. Weak wind. Departing aboard JA 8302. He was a flyer since his youth. Very methodical, he didn't fail to paste a weather chart for the day in his logbook. It was inconceivable to those who knew him that he could make a careless mistake. The airline for which he worked had a long accident-free record. The pilot himself had only recently been given a company award for 5,000 consecutive hours without an incident. What moment of devilry could have visited this veteran pilot? Once again, we reconstruct the course taken by the disaster plane. February 4th. All Nippon Airways plane number 8302 takes off from Sapporo, the largest city in northern Japan. The passengers were visitors to the famous Sapporo Snow Festival. Takeoff, 1755 hours. The plane flew above the clouds on jet route J35L. It approached Tokyo International Airport. The passengers were ready for landing. The sun had set and the moon was out. The sky and earth below presumably were blended in dark blue. The plane passed Tokyo Range Station and decreased altitude. Time, 1856 hours. The plane contacted Tokyo Control.
8302 passing 11,000.
8302, roger. Maintain 10,000.
Tokyo 8302, cancel IFR, present time.
302, roger. Contact Tokyo Tower approaching Edogawa.
Roger. All Nippon Jet 8302, traffic. Conver 880 departed auto marker 30 seconds ago. Do you have aircraft inside, over?
At that moment, a Japan Airlines Convair
have aircraft
880
inside,
flying
over?
over Tokyo Bay to the Boeing's port side was entering its landing pattern. Was the pilot searching for the JAL plane during the 10 seconds before his answer came?
302, this time negative.
This was the last word from the disaster plane.
All Nippon Jet 8302, Tokyo Tower. How do you hear me, over? All Nippon Jet 8302, Tokyo Tower. How do you hear me, over? All Nippon Jet 8302, 8302, Tokyo Tower. How do you hear me, over? All Nippon Jet 8302, 8302, Tokyo Tower. How do you hear me, over?
Let's reconstruct the conditions at the time. Both the JAL Convair and the Boeing 727 were trying to land simultaneously. The pilot of the JAL plane reported that he had passed through some small clouds, which may have made visual sighting impossible. There's a jetliner close by, which you do not see. Your plane is losing altitude at a tremendous rate. It's evening, and you cannot see the ocean clearly. These conditions add up to a tremendous strain. Your plane hits the water. Investigator Ejima initiated an investigation on jet aircraft navigation. Using a photometer developed in Japan, he records the changes in light as a jet plane descends at dusk. A jet plane descending from high altitude at dusk plunges suddenly into darkness. It is quite conceivable that the pilot's eyes cannot always accustom themselves to this sudden change. There is a physiological limit in the reaction of the human eye to darker light.
では覗き窓に顔をつけてください。
Expose a man to bright light for 5 minutes, then switch suddenly to semi-darkness. He cannot see anything for a while. Only after a considerable time does he become accustomed to the dim light.
はい、見えました。はい。
It is possible that the high efficiency of jet aircraft is one up on the human eye, which has built-in limitations. Investigators board a plane to make a landing at dusk. The change in light outside the aircraft and on the instrument panel is recorded. Altitude, 22,000 feet. It's still light outside.
Outside, 8.6.
The descent begins. Altitude, 12,000 feet. It's still light, but night is approaching just below. It's dark blue and visibility is limited.
Outside, 6.5. Instrument, 4.6. Outside, 5.0.
Altitude, 7,000 feet. Altitude, 3,000 feet.
Outside, 4.5.
It's dark outside.
Instrument, 測定できず.
It took only 5 minutes to descend from daylight to complete darkness. Pilots know that it's difficult to make a landing at nightfall. Records show that many jet disasters occurred at nightfall even on fine days. There is a growing imbalance between the efficiency of a jet plane and man's navigational ability. The investigation, which began with twisted bits of metal, reached the point where the problem concerns the jet plane itself and man's physiological ability to pilot it. In the investigation of an air disaster, the why and how remain a mystery as long as decisive evidence is not found in the wreckage. Nobody saw how the pilot acted at that decisive instant when the plane plunged to its death. Scientists can suggest possible causes, but they cannot say for certain how a man who is no longer with us acted. At that moment, just prior to the crash, what did the pilot say to his machine? And what was the machine's response?
This time negative. 302, this time negative. 302, this time negative. 8302, 8302. Tokyo Tower, how do you hear me? Over. All Nippon Jet, Jet 8302, Tokyo Tower. How do you hear me? Over.
The crash, which killed a total of 133 persons, poses a question regarding man's attitude as he tackles the challenges of the modern machine and electronic age. A machine which man cannot control can only destroy man. But only man has the capability to control and perfect that machine. Mankind continues to develop more complex machinery as his civilization becomes increasingly sophisticated. Question: is man sophisticated enough to withstand the confrontation between his own limitations and the super civilization he is creating?